to zip on over, then when we think about models, it's not really clear what a neural network is. I'm telling you that it's a neural network, that it's a network of neurons, of artificial neurons, but that really doesn't explain what it actually is, especially if you don't understand the math. So, with that said, I'm going to turn a little bit to an interesting project from Google DeepMind that looks at what AI might be through the eyes of various artists. And so, they produced this project called Visualizing AI. And they worked together with artists to try to develop different images of what AI seems like to scientists and to researchers. And when I think about AI, this is certainly what I think of. Although the specific visualizations might not be really what I'm thinking of. It's more on point than thinking of Transformers or Terminator or Skynet. So of these examples, I like this one in particular. And we'll just look at it for a second. So we can see that it's a whole bunch of little boxes that have various widths, and they're all moving. And there seems to be a gradual process that's, as these bars shift, they're moving these little cubes, and the cubes, their relative width is adjusting, their orientation is adjusting. And what this is really trying to say is that artificial intelligence uses numbers, really. It's linear algebra. If you remember linear algebra from college or high school, it's using linear algebra to manipulate vast matrices or collections of numbers. And it's multiplying, really, essentially, these large collections of numbers together. And at the end of it, at the other end of it, we get a prediction of what a human might think. And I think the reason why I like this animation so much is that it's really making clear that we don't quite understand why a neural network is able to simulate a human, why a neural network is able to predict what humans might think. Because at the end of the day, a neural network is a bit of a black box, and this is important because we can't exactly tell you why ChatGPT works. We don't understand why generative AI models work, why DALL-E is able to produce images, why Whisper is able to transcribe and translate in the same step. The method by which these models come to understand human behavior and they come to predict human behavior is completely opaque to us. So when we talk about artificial intelligence in the modern sense, what we really mean is we get these complex systems that through the manipulation of numbers are able to predict human behavior, but we don't understand exactly how. But we do have a few tidbits. And when it comes to a language model, which, if you remember, is a computer algorithm or model of language, is a computer algorithm designed to predict what humans might say, given some collection of sentences. So if I say United States of, you might think of America, and if I were the artificial intelligence, I might predict that you think America. The method by which language models understand words is a little bit important, and it's worth taking just a second at. So one of the things I like to do with ChatGPT is use it as a thesaurus. So when I use ChatGPT, either I'm programming and I want ChatGPT to help me, or I'm writing an essay and I can't come up with quite the right word. And so I come to ChatGPT and I ask it, do you have any other word that means heretofore? Because I don't want to use heretofore in a sentence or in an essay because it sounds a little bit too pretentious. And ChatGPT is able to provide me words. ChatGPT, the way it works inside, and when I say it works with large collections of numbers, it's because every word to ChatGPT is simply a collection of numbers. When you type something into ChatGPT and it produces words, it uses it looks at those words and then comes up with a series of numbers, and it multiplies those series of numbers together to arrive at some sort of conclusion. It turns words into numbers, it multiplies and adds and divides those words together, or rather those numbers together, and then it emits a word again. So ChatGPT thinks in words, and when you talk to ChatGPT, if you say words like queen, woman, girl, boy, man, this is kind of what it's thinking of. So if we go back to that animation I like so much, we can see that each of these little rows of blocks might actually be a word in ChatGPT's mind. It converts words into numbers. And so its process is opaque. We don't know why it can correctly answer my friend's exam, because the process by which it understands the meaning of those words in that exam, the process by which it converts words into numbers, is completely opaque to us. Just to be clear, why these individual squares are colored and why they're the outcome of this model learning the meaning of the word queen results in the word queen is completely arbitrary. Why each square has a particular width is completely arbitrary. It's because the model has learned to write that way. So, a language model predicts words. To get a little bit of a better sense at what that really means in practice, I'm going to open up this website that's been around for a while now called Write with Transformer. And Write with Transformer lets me load up different versions of GPT. It lets me load up small versions, big versions. GPT-2 is the predecessor model to the model inside ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is based off a model called GPT 3.5. And before GPT 3.5, you had a model called GPT-3. And before GPT-3, you had a model called GPT-2, which came out in 2019. And it was the very first large language model that blew people's socks off. It certainly blew my socks. And GPT-2 was interesting because it kind of understood the meaning of words. If I type something into GPT-2, like United States of, and I hit tab here, it's going to give GPT-2 the 3 words I just wrote, and it'll give me GPT-2's prediction. So it's trying to predict. It's a language model, it's a model of language, it's an artificial intelligence trying to simulate how I would think if I was being asked to predict United States of. And here it's giving me 3 probabilities, probable words, Europe, America, and Africa. Obviously, only really America makes sense as of right now, so I'm going to hit enter, and I might hit tab once again, and it'll predict another word. But the point is that United States of, hit tab, have GPT-2 predict a word. This process of it predicting a word and me hitting tab and having it predict another word, given United States of America, what might someone say next? And me hitting tab again, and it predicting another word, and so on, is really what ChatGPT does. When we type in a word into ChatGPT, and it gives you some kind of response, what's really happening is it's receiving a transcript, which is like, what is today's date? And then ChatGPT is a language model, and it's being passed this whole transcript, and it's being asked, what is the next most likely word? And ChatGPT is such a large language model. It's such a large model of language. It's got so many artificial neurons inside its brain that it's really mimicked both language really well, and it's also mimicked the world, because language reflects the world, of course. When we use language, we are discussing real things. And so if you have a really good model of language, as people have discovered, you kind of have a really good model of the world. So here the user is asking, what is today's date? ChatGPT decided to respond, well, rather GPT-2 decided to respond with, we've already talked about it. And I hope that you all get it right. I don't really understand that response, but that's because I'm using a really small model. So if we go and we look at GPT-2, the paper that came out with this by Radford from OpenAI, we can see that as we make these language models larger, as we give them more artificial neurons, they get smarter and smarter. So they go up and up in reading comprehension, up and up in their ability to translate, up and up in their ability to summarize, and so on. To go back now to the visualization, when we give a language model more artificial neurons, when we make these squares larger and larger, and we give them more and more squares, their ability to predict what we might say, given some sequence of text, gets better and better. And as they get better and better, they begin to understand something about the world. Because, and here's a little key fact, to really coherently and cogently predict what someone might say, you have to understand who that person is. You have to understand where they are in the world. You have to understand what they do for a living. You have to understand logic, discourse, rhetoric, emotions. You have to understand a lot to be able to coherently predict what someone might say. So when a language model is being asked to simulate a person and what a person might say in a given situation, it, by definition, and almost by the task at hand, is being forced to simulate the world. And so language models like GPT-2 were interesting when they came out in 2019 because they not only were good at predicting language, but they also seem to understand something about the world. So we can type something like America is. This doesn't make any sense, but America is a world-renowned international network and is a global leader in business. I have no idea why it said that, but it kind of seems to understand that America might be a global leader and a world-renowned something or rather. It has a vague sense of what America is. And this idea that a language model only trained to predict words, given many, many examples of words from the internet, might understand something about the world, has led us to today. ChatGPT is a reflection of what large language models are being tasked to do. They are tasked to simulate. And so the fact that I can go to a model like Hugging Chat or ChatGPT and type in America is ... and get a really coherent response when all it's doing, remember, is essentially what I just typed here. It's just predicting every word after every word after every word. The fact that it's able to reveal such a grand understanding of the world is really a reflection of the success of artificial intelligence. It's a reflection of the success of modeling, of neural networks, of prediction. And so, to go back then, artificial intelligence is having a computer simulate something like language. It's having that simulation predict what people might say. And a model then is really a model of people, and a model of language, and a model of culture, and a model of the world. And so when we talk about generative AI, and we talk about image models and text models, at the heart of it is really a language model that has a vast understanding of the world. So that I can type hot dog riding a skateboard into DALL-E and receive an image of a hot dog riding a skateboard belies such a success, such a grand and interesting success that we can't help but want to take advantage of it. Hence, the hype in generative AI in the last week. So next week, we're going to take a look at LangChain, and we're going to take a look at something else called ChromaDB, and we're going to learn about what it means to work with a language model. How do we take advantage of both our data and of language models and their understanding of the world? How do we combine both to interesting ends and functional and useful ends? I hope you join me for weeks 2 and 3 and 4, where we try to make use of the grand success of artificial intelligence. Thank you very much.